Today on the podcast, let's get electric. Stay tuned and you'll see what we mean. Hop in, buckle up, and get ready to lay it on the line. This is Not Speeding, Just Qualifying, a podcast that's just as fast as it sounds. What's up, family? I am David Lawrence, and welcome to the Not Speeding, Just Qualifying podcast. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. Before we get started, are you subscribed to us? If not, what are you waiting for? Make sure your setup is all dialed in and ready to go for pole position. Search Not Speeding, Just Qualifying on the YouTube Music app in the podcast section or on YouTube and subscribe to us today. Today, I am presenting to some and introducing to others a form of motorsports not particularly new, but could be revolutionizing motorsport for years to come. And to help me out, I got a friend who is very close to the action to help introduce all of it to you. So without further ado, enjoy our conversation. So, as you all know, I love to go in and introduce series to you all that you may not be very familiar with. Well, today, as we recorded this, we're getting ready for the new season of what is known as Formula E. And the E does stand for electric. The ABB FI Formula E World Championship will be kicking off in December. And to help me break it down, I have found just the guy to help. He has been covering Formula E for CBS here in the United States the last couple of seasons. So I definitely think he is definitely the right guy to give a one-on-one crash course on it all. So without further ado, welcome back to the Not Speeding, Just Qualifying podcast, my good friend, Ryan Myrehn. Hi, Ryan. How you doing today?
Hey, David. Doing great. Pleasure to be on with you to talk about Formula E.
All right, man. Love it. Before we get started, I got one little thing for you. As we record this in November, you just finished a busy season and you had some chance to get on the track behind the wheel. How was that experience? How was racing for a little bit for a change?
Yeah, it was definitely a change of pace, that's for sure. Maybe 10, 15 years ago, I was doing a little bit more club level spec Miata racing, but don't get the chance to do that a whole lot these days. But the opportunity came up to jump in a mini in a series called Champ Cars, what used to be Chump Car, very low level, as you might gather from the name of the series. But it's still a lot of fun, and I got to share the car with my dad as well up at Road America. So had a great time. It was a chance to be reminded why the folks that I cover are so special and so talented. When you do it yourself, it's put into stark contrast.
I love it. So, Ryan, as I said, we have you here for Formula E. And as someone who has covered these races for network television here, I honestly could not think of anybody else better to bring this up. So, as I mentioned, the ABB FI Formula E World Championship, the E does stand for electric. So, we're going to do this in a little bit of a for dummies style. So, we're going to kick it off. Question number one is, how long has Formula E been around?
Amazingly, over a decade at this point, going back to this past season. It was the 11th season of Formula E that wrapped up actually over the summer. It's a strange calendar. They run, originally the idea was to have it as a winter calendar, and it's evolved to not quite be that so much anymore. But the 12th season's about to get underway. It'll be the beginning of December that the season gets started down in Brazil, and that will mark the 12th season of Formula E.
We love it. So, one thing about Formula E, you mentioned Brazil, they'll actually be racing on a street circuit in Sao Paulo. Formula E races on a lot of street circuits. Why do they race on street circuits primarily?
It certainly was the intention of the championship organizers in the very beginning to take racing to the people, to put this in their backyards and make it so you can't miss it. You've got no excuse but to come out and check it out. Over the years, you've seen the series venture away from that philosophy somewhat. Now you do see tracks that you might see on a Formula One calendar or an IndyCar calendar. They raced in Portland, for instance, for a couple of years here in the States, but it still is a big part of the ethos of the sport to take the racing to the people. And I think a big part of it too comes down to the fact that electric vehicles and city centers, there's some convergence there. That's a good application for electric vehicles. And I think the manufacturers involved also like the visuals of their cars racing through some of the city centers, that they would like to sell their electric models to customers as well. So there's a few different reasons for it. I think as the sport continues to grow, and especially as the cars get more and more powerful, we might see the series venturing away from that philosophy even more. But I hope they don't lose it entirely, because there have been some pretty amazing backdrops over the years with the different cities they've raced in.
I would definitely agree. I actually like that, like you said, they have taken it to the people. It's an awesome philosophy to have. Of course, we Americans know all too well about that philosophy. We've seen it in numerous of our sports, including NASCAR and IndyCar. But you did mention manufacturers, and you flowed right into my next question. Which manufacturers actually do compete in Formula E, and why do they think it's so valuable for them to be here?
Well, it's the one place they can go and race with their electric cars, and it's a big part of every manufacturer's business model just about at this point. And some have focused exclusively on electrification. Jaguar comes to mind as one that's out of the internal combustion engine game. They're totally changing the perception of their brand by going the electric route. Others like Porsche, which has been in the news because their electric gamble hasn't quite paid off in the way that they intended, and that's had implications for their sports car racing programs. But nevertheless, it's still a big part of their philosophy for selling road-going cars. And so if you want to market through motorsport, if you want to develop especially the systems technology on these cars, which has some pretty good crossover between the race car and what you get in the street cars, this is the one place that you can go. So if we're talking about manufacturers that are involved, I mentioned two of them already. I would add Nissan to the list. Mahindra, which in the States is thought of more as tractors and power tools, but in their native India, that's an auto manufacturer as well. DS, big electric car brand over in Europe. And then we've had Maserati. That team is transitioning into Citroën, a brand better known for its rally racing. Really doesn't have a whole lot of circuit racing on its resume, but that's the new brand that Stellantis will have representing them, one of their two brands on the grid next year. McLaren has been there. They're moving away this year, but Yamaha and Lola have paired up going back to this past season with a brand new team. So there is a good amount of manufacturer interest. We've seen some others come and go over the years, but there's others that are knocking on the door and I think are kicking the tires, maybe evaluating a potential program in the future.
And the more, the merrier. We cannot say it enough. So we've talked about the manufacturers. Now let's kind of bring the body over the skeleton, if you will. Let's talk about these cars. What type of cars are used in Formula E, and how do they differ or somewhat, or in some ways be similar to that of Formula One or IndyCar?
Well, it's similar in the fact that they are single-seater, open wheel, open cockpit cars, the same way you would see in Formula One or in IndyCar. Like IndyCar, the monocoque, the chassis, is the same across the teams. It's not open for development like you see in Formula One. What is open for development are the powertrains and then the software control systems on these cars. And so for the manufacturers involved, they are producing and constantly tweaking their powertrains in these cars. Then they also are required, if there's a customer team interested, to provide a customer powertrain to a customer team as well. Some manufacturers have multiple customers. Some, like Nissan this year, will be on their own. They won't have a customer team, but those are the areas that are open for development. Other than that, the car is homologated. It is spec. We're in the third generation of Formula E car right now. They're built by a company called called Spark. This is actually an evolution of the original third-gen car, so it's what's called the Gen 3 Evo, and it's the final year of that before the new Gen 4 car comes in the subsequent season, Season 13, which has everyone in the industry extremely excited because the performance is supposed to be through the roof. I've worked with James Rossiter, who has done a lot of the test and development driving of this car, and he has told me that it's at or beyond F2 levels of performance, and the big step forward is probably with the new Bridgestone tires that are coming next year as well. Right now, it's a hand-cooked tire. The tires are actually an interesting part of Formula E because they are a very hard tire compared to a normal race tire, and they are a treaded tire, at least for the moment, so you use that same tire whether it's wet or dry. But I think some of that will be changing looking ahead to Season 13 and the new Gen 4 car with the new Bridgestones that are coming on, which by all accounts are a big step forward for the championship, which really hasn't had a high-performance tire to this point. Part of that has to do with the ethos of the series, as we talked about earlier, racing in small street courses on the city streets, trying to keep some of the speeds in check. But with all the power that's coming in the future, they needed a step forward in the tire, and I think everybody is really excited about what the future holds.
Man, you hit a nail on the head, because when I say I'm looking really forward to Season 13, when they finally unveiled the Gen 4 publicly, there's something to be said, because it kind of takes you back in time to those old school IndyCar and Champ cars. It gives you that kind of a feel. So if you guys haven't, Google FI Formula E Generation 4, I promise, will like what you see. You kind of spoke on the performance. So how fast do Formula E cars traditionally go? And you can speak a little bit more to like how Gen 3 and the Gen 4 performance go into it here.
Yeah, sure. I don't know that we have any public information about Gen 4 outside of some quotes saying that it should be approximately Formula 2 levels of performance, but suffice it to say, it should be one of the fastest single-seaters anywhere on the planet, regardless of electronic or internal combustion engine. It's going to be really spectacular. The current car, I mean, it's still plenty fast. It actually accelerates 0 to 60 faster than a Formula 1 car. That's one of the interesting things about the electric powertrain is the torque is instant. There's no delay. The driver puts the throttle down, and that is a ton of power going to the rear wheels. Right now, depending on what mode of the race you're in or what stage of qualifying you're in, they can have as much as 350 kilowatts of power available. And I can't remember off the top of my head the conversion to horsepower, but I'm sure your listeners can do a quick Google search and figure it out. It's quite a bit, and they're not very big cars either, so they accelerate extremely well. I think really if you're looking at like top speeds and things like that, it's the biggest limitation probably comes down to the tracks, which again are mostly pretty tight, and then also the fact that even during the race there's a lot of consideration going into energy management, so you rarely see the things totally uncorked, but speeds upwards of 150, 160 miles an hour in certain situations are not out of the realm of possibility.
Fantastic. Last question for you. On this FE 101, if you could say one thing that would appeal to someone to go and watch or see a Formula E race, what would it be?
I think the fact that you're looking at something that is on the forefront of technology in the moment in a way that I don't know that you see at a traditional internal combustion engine style race, which, don't get me wrong, I love those myself. I'm a gearhead. I love the smell of burning rubber and the exhaust fumes. So I get that Formula E is not that in a lot of instances. It is something a little bit different, but you have to respect the amount of manufacturers that are involved, the amount of development that is going in to these cars that then trickles down to the street cars that the manufacturers are selling, and seeing something that's just on the cutting edge, which is pretty neat. And if I could add a second thing, I would just say that the driver talent up and down the grid is as good as you will find in any series, top to bottom, in the world. Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, you name it. I would say that all barring maybe one or two of the drivers on the Formula E grid are being paid to be a professional racing driver to be there. You don't really have drivers that are paying to be there, which separates them from even the back half of an IndyCar grid or the bottom of a Formula One grid. So you look at the names. There's a lot of ex-Formula One drivers. There are drivers with glittering sports car resumes that are on the grid. Those that came very close to making it to IndyCar, to Formula One, that found a lifeline in Formula E, and it's a great mix. We've had some fresh blood come in going back to last year with some impressive young talent, and I think that figures to be a really interesting storyline as we move to the future. Some of the old guard that's been there from the very beginning, and they've seen this car evolve. They've never driven anything like what's coming next, and actually it could be closer to an F2 style car or an F1 style car, and maybe some of that fresh blood coming in is going to have a chance to compete with the old guard, and I think that could be really fun.
My thanks to Ryan for helping me break down this Formula E 101 of sorts. A little bit of a more simpler way to introduce Formula E to those who aren't very familiar with it yet. Hopefully I've piqued your interest. Maybe you'll watch a race. Maybe you'll become a fan. At least give it a try. You never know what you may like. All right, everybody, that is today's episode. Do you have a series or a topic you would like for us to cover on the show? Email us and let us know. Our email address, dalmotorsports@gmail.com. Again, that's dalmotorsports@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. We would also love to hear from you and follow us on social media. Instagram, X, Blue Sky, TikTok, Threads, all at the handle NSJQ Podcast. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and YouTube Music. It's the easiest way to know when we have new content coming out. And also, the more people that follow, like, and share, the easier we'll be able to spread the word about the NSJQ Podcast. Last but not least, would you like to follow me on my personal socials? The links to those will be in the description box to this episode. Thanks for joining us for the Not Speeding, Just Qualifying podcast, a general motorsports podcast that goes as fast as it sounds. I'm David Lawrence, and until next time, remember, you're not living life to the fullest until you're going flat out. So long, everyone.